How do you try to handle that? Because like you watch Wake Forest, they pass the eye test. They do have that win at Michigan, or against Michigan on neutral court, which carries a little bit, but they're clearly a different team now from where they were in the first couple months of the season. And it's something that the way Louisville's gotten over that was they've just have pulverized everyone they've played the last the last month or so to really kind of flip that script. But how do you
Well, for tournament
yeah,
stuff, like the way that it's explained to me by the guys that do like our bracketology stuff is that the metrics. Let's just take the net specifically, right? The
right.
net, your net rating is not as important for you as it is for the teams that play you, right? That is to tell for other teams' resumes how good you are as an opponent. Whereas what gets you into the tournament is what your resume is in terms of wins and losses and who you've beaten and things along those lines. And then what your net is and what your KenPom is might determine where you are in the field. So if you have two teams that have similar resumes where one has a KenPom of 25 and one has a KenPom of 75, they both might get into the tournament. You just might see one be an 8 seed and the other one be an 11 seed or in the playing game, if that makes sense. So I think that when it comes to getting in, they look more at wins and losses and what you've actually accomplished. And then when it comes to seeding, it's like, oh yeah, they're good because they beat the shit out of everybody. Whereas this team might not be as good because they kind of got a little bit lucky and they had to scrape out some wins. And they count and their wins, but it's just proof that this other team might be a little bit better and they've done a little bit more. So we'll give them a little bit of a higher seed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes a lot of sense. As far as Louisville goes, that's where you got four. If Clemson moves in the top 35, quad one wins to where that helps you. But then the fact that you've been beating the snot out of people really, really will help them as well. How do you think? Because I know right now you said you guys have them as a 7 seed. Louisville's a very interesting case because they're not going to have as many big quad one games as again these teams from the SEC, the Big 12, or the Big 10. But again, like they passed the eye test and they've been dominant in this last stretch. How high do you think they could end up being seeded if they keep playing the type of ball that they are right now? And where do you think realistically would be the idea? Because I know we had Kevin Sweeney on last week. It was kind of like, yeah, they'll be a 7, maybe a 6, but they're going to get passed up by a lot of these other teams. I feel like that narrative, even the last week, has
No,
kind of
I
changed a
don't
little
agree.
bit.
No, I
Yeah,
don't agree. Look, if you one, it's Louisville, right? It's
right.
Louisville. There's a name brand there. Even with having the last two, there's still a name brand there. Two, I don't care like how bad the ACC looks from the exterior, right? Louisville's projected to win every game the rest of their season. If they go, let's just say that Ken Palm projections 24-7 in the ACC with a 17-3 league record, and then go into the ACC tournament and um, let's just say get to the final and lose to Duke in the final, right?
Yeah.
Which means that you
You probably
have
picked up two more quad one wins in that
yeah, and you're
if the
27
if it
and
broke out
8,
right.
like with the Ken Palm projections. Let's just say 27 and 8. Finish second in the ACC regular season race. Finish second in the ACC tournament title. You'll be a 4 or 5 seed because yes, there are going to be teams in the SEC that pick up wins. There's also going to be teams in the SEC that beat the hell out of each other, right? Are you going to take let's say you're talking about teams on the 5 or 6 seed line, and also remember this: Gonzaga last year, same kind of scenario, went from being on the bubble heading into the last couple weeks of the season to a 5 seed. If you go out and you win all of these games late in the year, you're going to have a chance to be able to really climb up. Now, does that mean they can get to like a 3 or a 4 seed? I mean, might have to win out and win an ACC tournament title there to kind of get up to like the 3, 4 seed line. But keep winning, man. You keep blowing teams out. The Ken Palm keeps climbing. If people are really going to start believing, like the committee members really do believe in the Ken Palm's numbers, and I believe in it too. So there's a lot of moving parts. I always say this: like it's so hard to project what happens now because you don't only have to project what Louisville's going to do, you have to project who's going to beat up on each other in some of these other leagues. And outside of Auburn and Alabama, I just don't see anybody in the SEC coming out of there with like a 15-5 or 16-4 league mark. I mean, they're all going to be like
Yeah.
12-8. I think you're going to see a lot of that in the Big Ten too, as it kind of levels out once you get past the top 2 or 3. So I think Louisville's got a chance where they can climb in this thing, and you keep blowing teams out by 35 points, man. You're going to end up being like a top 12 team in some of these metrics. So
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, since the win streak started, according to Torvik, Louisville's been the 13th most efficient team in the country and have a top 10 offense. Like
Mhm.
that'll definitely play when it comes to it. I do think the big difference between Louisville this year and Gonzaga last year was Gonzaga had that marquee signature win at Kentucky and Rupp Arena that Louisville just isn't going to have, which is, but I do think it's a good comp. Other than that, I will say this, because this is very much what Louisville people are used to talking about when it comes to like bracketology of the NCAA tournament. How do you get to be a protected seed? And a year like this for Louisville, it means more than normally. I think, and that's because first and second round games are in Lexington. Now, I don't expect Louisville, even if they get a protected seed, to be there because Alabama is a thing, Auburn's a thing, Tennessee is a thing. There's so many good teams in the Southeast this year that are going to be
Well, the
protected
benefit
seeds. Yeah,
there, honestly, the benefit is that you're only going to be able to get two of those SEC teams there, and one of them cannot be Kentucky. Kentucky
right.
can't go to the Lexington Regional.
But for Louisville to get into the Lexington Regional, just because the way the pods worked out this year, Lexington's the closest for both Alabama and Auburn, and just because there's not something in like Jacksonville
Alabama
or
and Auburn, like
Birmingham.
Auburn's going to be Auburn will probably be the number one overall seed, right?
Agreed. Yeah,
And whether it's
Alabama I think is going to
Alabama,
be a 1 seed too.
whether it's Alabama or Tennessee or whoever it ends up being, like those, they're going to be a two seed at worst, right? Probably
Right.
the Tennessee is a two seed. Um, and Louisville's not going to get up that high. Like
Right.
best case scenario for Louisville is a four seed. Now, if they are a five seed or a six seed or a seven seed, I don't think you're getting that Lexington Regional because I do not think that they are going to put a protected seed against Louisville playing like this in the state of Kentucky.
I
It just ain't
completely
gonna
agree
happen.
with
Like,
you, but there is some past precedence of Louisville as a 6 seed played in Lexington in 2007, and they played a phenomenal game against Texas A&M in the round of 32. Ended up losing that game. Edgar Sosa had 31 points, and then it was either last year or 2 years ago, was it that they put Auburn in Birmingham?
mhm.
So I agree with you. It's not a
And you
thing that
remember, like
happens
they put
often, but
South
yeah,
Carolina in
in Greenville,
Greenville
yeah, and then they beat
against
Duke and
Duke.
Jason
Like,
Tatum,
so it's possible, like it's possible that it
but
will
not
happen.
probable.
But there's so many bracketing principles that comes with some of this stuff that I do believe that some of that stuff just ends up being like dumb luck because you
Yeah,
kind of
agreed.
have to end up somewhere as opposed to them being like, well, let's put, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it kind of ends up that way, and it's like this is the lesser of two evils. So, it's never going to be perfect. You can still hope. I think the best way to make sure that you get into the Lexington Regional is to be the best number four seed. You got to be the 13th
yeah.
best team in America.
But would there be a chance though that they would put a Louisville as a 4 seed in Lexington over an Alabama as a 1 or a 2 seed? I don't think they would do that. I
Why would
think
it have
I
to be over? It wouldn't have to.
be well because because Alabama gets the geographic preference, correct, of where they would want to go, and that would trump Alabama as a 1 seed, would trump Louisville as a 4 seed, correct?
Yeah, but it's
Yeah,
each one of those each one of those seeds. I believe what they do is each one of those seed lines, they say, all right, let's make sure all the one seeds end up in the closest regional with the least amount of travel
right.
possible. All the two
But
seeds, all the three seeds, all the
but
four
only
seeds.
2 teams get that pod, and I don't think for Louisville to get there, they would have to be one of the top 2 teams in that geographic region, correct?
Oh wait, it's not the regional, it's the first round,
Yeah,
isn't
it's
it?
the first round. Yeah, yeah,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I'm
See,
losing my
that's why
mind.
I think the regional's a different story because
Yeah, that's why.
it's
Okay,
the
okay,
same thing
okay. I
applies.
take it all back. I take it all back, Jack. All
But
right,
here's what here
let's talk about Bloomington. All right,
yeah.
you're Indianapolis. I think you're more
Yeah,
likely to
yeah,
get
that's what I was gonna
Indianapolis than
say.
on
That's
Lexington.
exactly what I
Okay,
was gonna say.
okay.
Indianapolis, yes,
I don't know.
that all applies. Yeah.
Here, you know what? See this mug is full of coffee, right? That's because this mug is still full of coffee and not that much coffee left in there. I don't that I'm losing my mind. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll say this. You said Bloomington, one
Don't
team
I
that
leave that.
yep.
Don't you dare cut that out either. Leave
No.
that in.
But yeah, but that was going to be my next point, though. Maybe you don't get Lexington. Maybe you could end up in Cleveland, which wouldn't be the de facto home game Lexington would be, but that's still a very short drive for Louisville fans that are probably very excited to go to an NCAA tournament game.
Mhm.
But if you could get a top 4 seed, that's where Indianapolis could come into play. We've seen that for years from Louisville and Kentucky coming up and kind of taking over that city in that regional round, or in Kentucky's case, the Final Four in 2015 as well. Never Indiana because they're never good those years, unfortunately for me as the Indiana grad. But and that's not going to be a quad one win for Louisville this year either. Sorry to tell everyone because they've crapped the bed yet again. But if you could get into Indianapolis that and make the second weekend, that becomes the situation where we've seen it over and over, whether it be Louisville, Kentucky, and Indy, Kansas when they play in Kansas City, Duke or Carolina when they have regionals in Charlotte or Greensboro, something like that. It is incredibly hard to beat those teams when they have de facto home games in the NCAA tournament. It's not impossible, and good teams do it, but that's just such an edge and such an angle to all this that I always think is something, UConn and MSG or Boston last year. We saw that as
Mhm.
well. Well, to where if you can get that protected seed, that matters to me a lot more than whether or not you're wearing a white or a red jersey when it comes to
Mhm.
the NCAA tournament.
Yeah. No, look, and also, like, let's just be frank. If you get a protected seed, it means you are a better basketball team. Like if
Yeah.
you are a 4 seed, you are a better basketball team than if you are a 7 seed. And that is always going to be a better sign. And if you keep on winning, it means you're a better basketball team than a team that goes 6-4 down the street. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
so there are reasons why you get seeded at that point, and reasons why seeds that are that high end up making it a little further. No, but I'll say this too. I don't think it really matters where Louisville gets seeded, because I think that the fact that they are um, good enough defensively with one of the most dangerous offensives that you're going to find in college, but like they shoot a ton of threes, and when
Yeah.
they get hot, everybody is hot. Shooting is contagious, and they can light you up, and like they did against SMU, hit 19 threes in a game,
Yeah.
right?
And they're shooting the ball a lot better too. They're up in ACC play, they're up over 37% from three. Like
Mhm.
that's a very good, respectable number. And that's something that, Coach Lieberman and I talk about a lot early on in the years. Like, will water eventually find its level there? Or at some point you kind of are, you are. We've kind of seen that positive regression for Louisville. They're still getting the same good shots they were getting earlier in the year, but you're seeing guys like Rain Smith, for instance, who is shooting over 52% from three since the winning streak started. He's 43 of 82 from three during the 9 game win streak, which is pretty fucking insane. Pardon my
Yeah, it's
language
pretty good.
there, but
Pretty
but
good.